Waiting for me. I understand. I used to be a teacher many years ago, and I knew that if you waited for 15 minutes and the professor wasn't here, what would you do? Just leave. Yeah. Well, it's great to see you all, and thank you again for waiting for me. It goes to show that as much as we're always on time when delivering packages, sometimes I cannot be on time. But I was telling the ladies on the elevator that I had a choice to make. I could either take a call from my boss, the CEO of UPS, or just ignore him and show up on time. So you can imagine what choice I made, right? I actually made the choice I had to make. But today I want to spend some time giving you a quick overview as to what we do at UPS, but most importantly, talking about finding a job. How many of you are working today? Just curious. Yeah? Okay. How many of you are looking for a job? Okay. How many of you are about to graduate and you still don't know what you're going to do? All right, quite a few. All right. How many of you are below the senior level? You still have some time to go. Okay, a few of you. Excellent. All right. Well, I will tell you that, I've been with UPS now for 30 years. I've had the opportunity to work on many different things in our company. I have two roles at UPS. I'm the Chief Information Officer. So in other words, I have responsibility for all IT at UPS. The second thing that I have responsibility for is I'm the Chief Engineering Officer for the company. So I have responsibility for all things engineering in the organization. So you'll see some of that here in the presentation in a few minutes as to what we do from an engineering standpoint. But I will tell you that after 30 years of working with UPS, I have found this company to be just the perfect fit for me. And when I think about my career with the company, I started right out of school. I had gone to USC in the West Coast. I had wrapped up school with both a bachelor's in industrial and systems engineering and two masters, one in manufacturing engineering and the other one in computer science. And looking for jobs, I had three different companies that had given me offers. One was Coca-Cola. And at the time I said, my goodness, I'll never go to Atlanta. And of course, you know how that changed because I'm here in Atlanta today. The second one was IBM. And in those days, working for IBM was like being a tiny little fish in a massive pond. IBM is a big organization. In those days, it was even bigger. So certainly, I didn't feel that that was the right fit for me. And then the other one was UPS. And I didn't really know much about UPS, besides the fact that when I was going through graduate school, I actually had responsibility for the capstone design projects as a teaching assistant in the university. And I had the opportunity to connect with UPS to find projects for my students. And I found that UPS had something really unique, something that attracted me to the company in many different ways. And quite frankly, to this date, is perhaps the most important thing that I have lived through 30 years with this organization. And it is the type of people that I work with at UPS. It was the right fit for me. People who cared about people who cared about customers, people who cared about having a definite impact in the communities that we support and that we serve, and of course in the careers of those who wanted to dedicate themselves to really improving their skills, their capabilities, their abilities to help the company grow. And like I said, after 30 years, I wouldn't have it any other way. Now I have a third job. I am a member of the board of directors of Hershey. Everybody knows Hershey, right? And I will tell you, I really enjoy that role as well because I have an opportunity to look at Hershey from a corporate perspective, see a company that's been around for 125 years, longer than UPS. UPS has been around for 112 years, but see the common themes between both companies that have made these two companies be in business for as long as they have. And once again, is the attention to people and companies that truly care about people at the end of the day. So I'm going to spend a little time just talking about choosing what career you really want to pursue, why you would pick a company, what are some of the things that you want to do to actually grow within a company, and of course what's worked for me and what has worked for so many UPSers across the organization. But the first thing I wanted to share with you is a little bit about the company. When you think about UPS, what do you think about? Anybody? You think delivery trucks, right? What else? What can Brown do for you? Absolutely. What else? Anything else? Packages, lots of packages. That's usually what you think about when you think of UPS. Most people, also think about the friendly UPS driver that they see out there driving those brown trucks. I had the opportunity to be a UPS driver for 8 months in my career. And the reason why I tell you that is because today I would not be the CIO of UPS if I wouldn't have had that opportunity, quite frankly. it opened my eyes to what the company was really about. And it actually gave me a sense as to what working for UPS really meant, which at the end, it was not delivering that package, it was not driving that truck, it was not wearing that uniform. It was making sure that we did something that was special for our customers. And that was getting people what they need and when they need it. And that became a really important mission for me. Now, you may say, well, you went to school. I spent a lot of time in school. I was a teaching assistant. I did well in school. Why would I be a driver for 8 months? One of the best experiences I have had in my entire life. It actually gave me a good sense as to what the job was all about and what the company really stood for. And the reason why I tell you that is because as you pursue your careers and as you find opportunities to work in your different companies, one key thing to keep in mind as you go through that is to really never be afraid of doing the jobs that will teach you best how to get those jobs done, what the company is all about, and how the company actually functions. To this date, when I make technology decisions, I still refer back to that experience. And I would never change it because it really made me a better UPSer. But of course, when you think about all that, you think about UPS as the drivers, the packages, the trucks, all the things that we use to make those packages available to our customers. At the end of the day, from my perspective as a CIO, I actually think of UPS today, more than ever before, as a technology company. A technology company that happens to be in the business of delivering packages, in the business of logistics. So most companies that you interact with today, quite frankly, they become technology companies. And it'd be rare for you to find an organization that is not using technology as that main driver of innovation, capabilities, the tools that our customers are looking for today. This is what UPS actually represents today. We have roughly 481,000 employees around the world, and that number continues to grow. We operate in 220 countries and territories around the world. We manage on any given day, we'll put out 100 and some thousand vehicles. We own 123,000 of those. See that number there, 564 airplanes? UPS is also an airline. It's the 9th largest airline in the world, or in the US. And we are really proud of that because what that has allowed us to do is really grow our air presence, making sure that packages get delivered the next day through the network that we've created. And then, of course, we're in a position today to deliver 21 million packages a day. That's what we're delivering today. Come Christmas time, that number will jump to roughly 32 million packages. I want you to think about what that actually means. Very few businesses have to scale up to that amount of business in such a short amount of time. So between, let's say, the last week of October, we're already into October, and Christmas Day, we will have over 100,000 people join the organization. 100,000 people join the organization in the US alone, by the way. We will add up capacity in all kinds of ways to make sure that we can ultimately get all those packages delivered to our clients on time as we promise, as we commit. And we do that really, really well. But again, to be able to do that, you have to have an organization that is driven towards doing what is right for our customers. And an organization that ultimately values people. Because no matter how much technology I bring to the table, at the end of the day, the work gets done at UPS through the great people that we have in the company, those 481,000 employees that make the organization today. Now, we do many things today as a company. If I were giving this presentation 15 years ago, maybe a little more than that, maybe 20 years ago, and you asked me what is it that UPS does, I would tell you that UPS delivers packages. That's the only thing that I would say. But today, UPS has really transformed into a much larger organization, really a provider of logistics services. So we have small package delivery, what you would normally see going to your homes. But we're also the largest broker in the world for international shipments. We are a freight forwarder, one of the largest in the world as well. We have UPS Capital that offers all kinds of different insurance and other types of financial services to our customers. We have the UPS Store that many of you can see out there, where we actually provide different types of access to our customers for them to be able to do business with UPS. We're in the business of healthcare, large healthcare logistics branch, where we actually managed all the distribution and fulfillment for large healthcare customers around the world. So we do that for them as well. And lastly, again, I put it there lastly because, of course, it supports everything else. we're a technology company. My team today not only supports software that we buy from others, but we build our own software. And just to give you a sense as to what the size of the IT organization at UPS is, we have roughly 5,500 IT professionals that are really dedicated to building technology in the organization. Those of you who have interest in technology, plenty of opportunity. There are certainly plenty of opportunities at UPS for those of you who are looking for those types of fields and careers. We will continue to grow the technology footprint at UPS. We firmly believe, and my CEO would tell you that, my boss, he would say that the future of UPS is truly based on the technology that we bring forward. But that's not really what I wanted to speak to you about. What I wanted to speak to you about is how you make a choice as to what company you ultimately want to work for. And I'd like to think of this as the 3 C's for your company choice. Okay? And if there's nothing else you remember of this presentation today, besides that, the fact that we talked about UPS, is really this slide, thinking about the 3 C's as you're making a selection for the company you want to dedicate your time and your efforts to. The first one is culture. Got to make sure that the company that you select to work for has the right culture for you. Culture is important. You'll see what I mean by that. The second one is conscience. At the end of the day, you have to work for an organization that has similar values to yours. If the company doesn't value what you value, I guarantee you today that you will have a really difficult time adjusting to that organization, and you will not be happy. For you to be successful in any job you take, you got to be happy with what you do. See, I am happy with what I do. I've been happy throughout my entire career. Now, don't get me wrong. There have been many days in which I've said, my goodness, what did I get into? I got to go somewhere else. Not FedEx, by the way, just somewhere else. But at the end of the day, I always go back to these 3 C's. Does this company have the culture that matches my ideal culture? Does this company value what I value? That's conscience. And then lastly, and very importantly, don't forget about this. If you get a job in which you do not feel that you're contributing, that's not the job for you. Find something else. Go somewhere else. You got to feel like every time you go, bless you, every time you go to work, every time you show up, you in fact are contributing to the success of the organization. And that's really important to me personally, as I hire a lot of people that come and spend time in the organization. This past summer, we hired in the IT organization alone over 200 interns. And let me tell you what, we make it a point. We try it as best as we can. We cannot make everybody happy. But I would tell you that my team does a great job in making sure that every single one of those internships is meaningful. That at the end of the day, the folks that spend some time with UPS during that time of the year found value in spending time with the company, and that ultimately they were able to contribute. So remember, culture, conscience, and contribution. Let's talk about the first one, culture. I don't know, how many of you have heard this statement? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah? Some of you have seen that before. It's used many, many different times. You know, when you hear these types of statements, you can think about them in many different ways. In my view, I have actually lived this. Especially as I, grew within the organization and took on more responsibility, it would be really interesting for me to see how we were building all kinds of strategies that ultimately could not be implemented because the culture of the company was playing against them. And as much as we tried, we just could not get things through. It was ultimately driven by the culture that had been established in the organization for a long, long time. And of course, for us to be able to implement some of those strategies, we had to change the culture. How easy do you think it is to change the culture of a company that's been around for 112 years? Not easy. It takes a lot of effort. And in some cases, it just simply can't be changed. So at the end of the day, the way that we accepted our culture in the company is there are many good things about the UPS culture. There are certain things that we need to change about the culture. But at the end of the day, what's mattered to me the most as an employee of this great company is that the key components of the culture that attracted me to the company to begin with are still in place today. Let me tell you a little bit about that. Start with this. I'm an engineer, by the way. I didn't tell you all that. But I'm actually an engineer, and I love engineering. I love formulas. We solve a lot of problems in UPS through the engineering disciplines that we have in the organization. And everybody's seen that formula out there, right? E equals EMC squared. Now, I'm not going to ask you to explain it. I'm not going to ask you. There's no test associated with this, I promise you. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I have my own formula. It's related to diversity and inclusion. It's part of our culture at UPS. The formula is a little different. It's E plus MC squared equals ID. I'm going to tell you what all these variables represent. At the very end, ID stands for inclusive diversity. Inclusive diversity. It's important to me as a leader in the organization to make sure that at the end of the day, UPS creates a culture of inclusive diversity. Not just diversity, not just inclusion, both inclusive diversity. So now, the E stands for employees. Dedicated, committed employees. Creating a group of employees that truly cares about the value that UPS provides to its customers. A group of employees that really understands what their mission, their role, their responsibilities are in serving our customers. Really important to do that. It's also very important that they understand that as an organization, we value them as employees and that ultimately they're important to the success of the organization. If we as leaders do not create an environment where employees feel that way, we definitely will not be able to execute on our strategy. So it's really important that we do that and we think about our employees for the value they bring to the organization and we treat them well. Very important to me. So this was critical to me. I wanted to work for a company that valued me as an employee. The second aspect is management commitment. And I put a square on that. It's really important that for us to create an environment of inclusive diversity, that the management team is committed to that diversity, to that inclusion. I've been very fortunate to see incredible leaders throughout the organization who have truly committed to inclusive diversity. So you can now see that when you have employees that care, employees who really want to see success in the organization, and you have management's commitment in helping them be successful, you now start creating an environment of inclusive diversity. Without that inclusion and without that diversity, UPS cannot be successful. So at the end of the day, when we think about inclusive diversity at UPS, first, diversity can be treated as a numbers game, and I don't really play that in my groups. How many women we have, how many folks from other countries we hire, how many people of other races, other genders we bring into the organization, that can be just a numbers game. We definitely have to have appropriate representation in our groups for the right diversity of thought that is required for us to be successful in the future, but at the same time, we truly believe that at the end, it's inclusion that wins. So inclusive diversity is core and key to the success of the company. And one of the reasons why I've stayed in the organization for so long is because of that inclusive diversity. In fact, I would make the argument that I wouldn't be here with you today if I didn't have the leadership that supported me throughout the years, the folks that really cared about being inclusive, the folks that really cared about bringing diversity into the organization. That inclusive diversity gave me opportunities to be able to do what I do today. Inclusive diversity ultimately is key. How many of you have seen this movie? Yeah? Really a cool movie to see. If you haven't seen it, certainly encourage you to see it. It talks about diversity, and it talks about diversity and inclusion. The movie talks about 3 women, remarkable women that worked in the space program many years ago. They were seen as computers. In those days, computers were actually human beings that were doing all kinds of manual calculations. And for them to be able to do the work that was needed to be done by the engineers, to put a man on the moon ultimately, they needed all these computers to do their job and do it really, really well. Well, these ladies were outstanding at what they did, but they were viewed just simply as computers, not necessarily as humans that were providing significant value to the success of the space program. In fact, they were treated poorly, they were segregated, they were not considered part of the team. It was really an interesting situation that these ladies had to live through. But yet, there was one specific leader, if you watch the movie you'll see it, one specific leader that realized that the success of the team depended on these computers. And for him and his program to be successful, he needed to include them in the success of the mission. At the end of the day, and I won't tell you the rest of the movie, but at the end of the day, you will see in that movie how the value of a leader that truly cared about inclusive diversity made a significant difference in the success of that entire program. Well, today, At UPS, we feel the same way. For our company to be successful, it's really critical that we have inclusive diversity in the organization. That attracted me to the company when I first started. That attracts me to the organization today. And I'm not going to tell you how you should be thinking about the organization that you want to work for, but I certainly can tell you that as you select the company that's going to be the one that you're going to dedicate your first years of employment, that you certainly think about how that organization is using inclusive diversity to build new ideas, to bring new concepts to the table, and ultimately be competitive in the market. Our company, after all, has had a great history of diversity. And I am really proud of this because at the end of the day, it's one of the reasons why I selected UPS. I'm the first Hispanic to be in the management committee of UPS. I'm the first Hispanic to be the chief information officer of the company. And by the way, several of my partners in the management committee are also of diverse origins and backgrounds. And when I see that group making decisions for the company, which now makes over $70 billion a year and has 481,000 employees, I firmly believe that one of the reasons for our success is because we value that diversity for all these years. Okay? Now, what we've also done is we've been very effective at creating what we call an infrastructure for inclusion and innovation. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I'm going to walk you through this really quickly. The first part of this is the fact that we need to recognize that there are external initiators that are driving that diversity and inclusion at UPS. They include innovation. If we don't have a diverse and inclusive environment, tough to innovate. It includes inclusion. The population is changing as well. UPS, a company that serves so many countries around the world, has to be diverse enough to be able to represent the different needs of our markets around the world. And then the last piece there is that there are certain internal imperatives that drive us to have effective diversity and inclusion programs in the company. There has to be a structure in place, includes people, processes, and programs to support diversity and inclusion. And it includes a culture in which we give people the autonomy, the authority, action, access, and advancement opportunities for them to grow. I could spend an hour giving you an overview of this, but just want you to think about this. If a company that you select to work with doesn't have some of these basic components to really drive and motivate diversity and inclusion within the organization, chances are that company is missing opportunities for innovation and for growth. Talked to you about inclusive diversity already. I'm not going to go through this again, but again, certainly one of those things that was important for me to stay in the company and to continue to grow my career in the organization. The next piece is conscience. Think of it as the values that the organization has. If you don't have common values, you will not find the opportunities that are right for you within the organization. For me, this was important, that the company that I worked for had a significant impact around the world. Now, for you, it may be that you want to work for a startup. That's perfectly fine. That startup can have a massive impact across the world. But for me in particular, having a global footprint was important. When I started with the company, I saw this as important. Why? Because I could see that the organization cared about the customers that it had in place. And I also realized that at the end of the day, UPS had the ability to influence and impact the lives of many around the world. The other one was, I wanted to work for a company that cared about the environment. And now you may say, my goodness, UPS, all those trucks, all those airplanes, how can you be an environmentally conscious organization? Well, we are. We spend a lot of time and effort making sure that we have the right sustainability programs to support our company, to support our customers, ultimately to support the environment. I believe that it was important to have an organization that was environmentally responsible, that despite all the emissions that our equipment actually emits, that at the end we had means and mechanisms to change that around. And today we do a lot of that. I'll tell you about that in a second. Like I said before, me being from another country, it was important that the organization that I worked with was one that had global connections. And UPS, of course, has had global connections for a long time. And the last piece there is the employee experience piece. Making sure that if I was going to work for UPS, I felt appreciated, I felt that the company cared about me, I felt that the company wanted me to progress because it was good for me as an employee, but also good for the company. That was important to me. What you see there on that slide, to me, is the conscience of UPS. It's a company that cares about sustainability, environmental responsibility, making sure that we create global connections, and ultimately that we create also great employee experiences. To this date, I worked really, really hard to create this same type of environment for the people that come and join the IT and the engineering groups. And of course, back to sustainability, I wanted to mention this to you. Certainly wanted to work for a company that had well-stated goals. Me being an engineer, I like measurement. Well, UPS is measurement happy. We measure everything. And I will tell you that from a sustainability standpoint, we're really good at measuring how we're making progress in support of our goals towards becoming more sustainable. We have them well defined. We follow up on these goals consistently. And it's become a mission of mine, quite frankly, as I continue to progress with UPS over the next few years, to exceed those goals that you see here. And I'll just hit on a couple. You see those environmental goals at the bottom there? The one towards the end there, 25% by 2020. What that actually represents is that by the year 2020, just next year, 1 out of every 4 vehicles we purchase at UPS will be of alternative fuel type or alternative energy type. We are committed to that. We're going to hit that goal. In fact, we now have over 10,000 vehicles in the network that are of alternative fuel type. And we continue to experiment with all kinds of different technologies to make those vehicles even more sustainable, more efficient to support the environment. At the top there, you see things that were also important to me when I was young. And they are definitely important to many of our employees today, making sure that we supported the community. We are huge contributors to United Way. You can see our charitable contributions in any given year at $117 million in 2020 is our goal. We're going to exceed that goal, by the way. When it comes to volunteerism, making sure that we have a group of employees that truly wants to help and engage with the communities was important to me then. It's important to me today. Certainly something to keep an eye on. In 2020, we will have over 20 million hours of contribution to the communities that we serve. This is cumulative over a period of time. And then lastly, 15 million trees being planted by 2020 in support of the environment as well. Okay? What's important here for you is not the numbers on the slide, it's really understanding what matters to you. What are the things that really bring value to you? And if the environment is one, you've got to make sure that you work for a company that cares about the environment. If having these types of goals is important to you, got to make sure that you work for a company that has these types of goals. If helping the communities that you live and work in is important to you, got to make sure that you work for a company that supports you in that particular regard. We do believe, as it relates to supporting the environment, that UPS plays a key role in making sure that that happens time and time again. What the slide tells you is that innovation is going to continue to help us honor the conscience of the company. And this is where it's really cool for me as an engineer to think about a company that has a conscience that uses what we bring to the table to live that conscience, engineering. So the engineers at UPS are really charged with finding ways to deliver packages in a world in which there's even more congestion than ever before. Engineers at UPS are responsible for finding solutions that continue to improve air quality. And engineers at UPS are also responsible for finding a way to reduce wear and tear on infrastructure, including our own vehicles. So today we have a number of engineering programs to help us actually live that. And I'll tell you what that means to me in terms of contributions in a second. By 2020, I mentioned this to you already, we'll have 1 in 4 vehicles will be of alternative fuel. We will be driving over 1 billion miles by that particular point in time using alternative fuel vehicles in the network, which is extremely important to us, again, in terms of fuel consumption and responsibility to the environment. And of course, we'll continue to work on cool new solutions like this one here. We now have a number of electric bikes around the US and in other countries around the world that are helping us get things delivered to our customers more effectively at a lower cost and certainly with a lot less emissions. So we're excited about these types of solutions. We have investments in Tesla on electric semi-trucks. We have investments with a number of electric vehicle companies that are cool solutions that UPS is committed to continuing to bring to life to support the environment. Definitely part of our conscience today. And then the last component here is contribution. Contribution is really important to me. I've mentioned to you already, I'm an engineer, and if at the end of the day we're not solving problems for the company, we're not really doing our jobs. Let me tell you a little bit about contribution here in a second. Let me skip this here. Here's engineering at UPS. So engineering has multiple responsibilities. We have plant engineers that are responsible for research and development of new material handling solutions. In fact, I have a robotics team in the group that is doing amazing things in support of our automation strategy in the company. We will be implementing more robotics within the organization to be able to cope with some of the shortages we're going to see in the years to come related to people who want to come and do some of the repetitive tasks we have inside the organization. They develop all the material handling systems we have across the organization. They're the ones that are helping us build all this different capacity that is necessary to support you as our customers. They're responsible for maintaining our facilities. They're also responsible for all environmental compliance at UPS, meaning that as we move and manage hazardous materials across the company, they're the ones that need to make sure that at the end, those hazardous materials are handled properly across the network. Industrial engineering is another branch of the engineering function at UPS. These folks here have incredibly important responsibilities in the company. They do all the planning for UPS. So I mentioned to you what happens here in December. That is the group that will make sure we have the right number of drivers, the right number of vehicles, the right number of facilities, all the assets and resources we need to be successful during peak season. That's what we call it at UPS. Now remember, I say peak season, I say it loosely, but what these folks have the responsibility to do as well is make sure that we do all that and we still make money. So it's a critical job for UPS. And then lastly, automotive engineering. These folks are responsible for all equipment at UPS that doesn't fly. So of course we have an airline engineering group that's responsible for all of our airplanes, but these folks of automotive engineers have responsibility for managing the fleet, developing the next generation UPS vehicles, and of course making sure that we support all of our ground support equipment in the airports where we operate from. That's what they do. To give you a sense, what these folks do is of incredible importance to the organization. And it goes back to now the contributions that my group does and why I'm excited about the job that my group does, and of course, therefore, the job that I do for UPS has to be important to you. If you don't have the ability to contribute, you will not be happy in the jobs that you take. From my perspective, the team has done incredible things. We manage huge data centers that manage and support a lot of technology at UPS. Every time you track a package with UPS, really what happens there is short of a miracle. You track it from your phone, it goes to our data centers, it searches for the most recent status of that package, it comes back, feeds it back to you, and tells you exactly what's going on with that package. But most importantly, what we've been able to do is now give you an opportunity to be able to manage the physical world through that digital interaction. So today, through UPS, you can actually track a package. If you want it delivered to another location, you can make that request digitally. If you want it delivered to an access point for you to pick it up later, you can do that digitally. If you want UPS to hold that package for you until next week, you can do all that digitally. All that happens through technology and innovation at UPS. There's definitely a series of contributions there that the engineers, the technologists at UPS do to make sure that UPS works well every single day. We support over 200,000 mobile devices in the company. In any given day, we will receive over 338 million tracking requests. People are tracking their packages constantly. They all want to know when that package is going to be delivered. And of course, they support a lot of technology to make UPS efficient. UPS for many years has been a very efficient company. The reason why we're as efficient as we are today is as a result of the technology we have. In fact, every single day, we put ourselves in a position where we optimize every delivery route that the drivers go out and deliver. We know exactly where they should turn. They know how many miles they should drive. We know how long it should take them to get that work done. And it helps us save, in any given year, over $400 million a year. All that happens as a result of the work of the engineers at UPS. Significant contribution to the organization. And of course, when we think about now the future of UPS, and when you think about the jobs that you want to engage with, it's really important to keep in mind, where else is the company going? What is the company going to do in the future? Will they be able to use my skills and capabilities as I work for that organization? Well, in the case of UPS, engineers have plenty of work to do. In fact, we have some of the biggest logistical challenges we've ever seen in our history. And we've been around for a long, long time. We have e-commerce as a huge challenge. It's an interesting one, of course. We continue to see significant growth in e-commerce. Growth, the company keeps growing. How do you keep up with that growth and have all the assets, all the capabilities, all the capacity that is necessary to keep up with that growth? We need to continue to scale our business. We need to continue to improve our time in transit. In fact, we are now in the middle of this huge initiative internal to the company to reduce the amount of time that it takes for a package to go from point A to point B on the ground, just to continue to expedite the overall UPS network. Engineers are required for that. We do a lot of quality control within the organization. We do a lot of cost reduction initiatives, continue to drive efficiency. All that is driven by the engineers at UPS. That matters to me. And for as long as we have these problems in front of us, I will definitely find continued interest in working for UPS. It's all about contribution. The last piece that I'll share with you is what we do from an IE and IT perspective. IT is, of course, the technology group at UPS. IE is the industrial engineering group at UPS. What that particular alignment has created for us is significant opportunities to improve the way that we do business in the company. And it's helping us drive a number of new ideas, all related to what we call the Smart Logistics Network at UPS. I won't bore you with the details here, but at the end of the day, gives me purpose again to continue to build the most efficient, effective, data-driven network that exists in the world. Cool stuff for us to build. And then, of course, we are working on all kinds of different emerging technologies that will help UPS continue to grow its presence, continue to keep us competitive, and continue to do a good job for our customers in the future. Just this week, we announced that we received approval from the FAA to be the first company in the world, certainly the first company in the US, I should say, that has been granted the approval by the FAA to actually fly drones commercially and to be, in essence, a drone airline. And it's really neat. We now have an airline that is dedicated to drones at UPS. A chief pilot that is responsible for managing the group. We have a team that is looking at where is best for us to utilize this type of technology. It's going to continue to grow. And we will use all these different technologies here in the future to continue to improve the way that the company works. Okay? So I'll leave you with this. At the end, remember the 3 C's. I get excited about this because I care about the contributions that the group does. If I didn't feel that I was making any type of contributions to UPS, I would quickly lose interest, and quite frankly, I'd go and look for another job. That's not the case. That's one. The next one is, of course, culture. If the culture is not in place, if you're not comfortable with the culture of the company, not the place for you. Go somewhere else. And then lastly, conscience. And by the way, for me, of the 3, conscience is perhaps the most important. An organization without a conscience is an organization that you don't want to be associated with for the long run. In my case, I have been really fortunate to work for a company that does have a conscience, that cares about its people, cares about its customers, and wants to do the right thing for the communities that we serve. Does that make sense? All right, so just remember the 3 C's. You'll be just fine. I don't know if there's no time for questions, I'm assuming, right?
We might have just a couple questions.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
And if you have to leave, just us on campus, we can just
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
This event is being recorded, so if you guys have a question, please raise your hand and I will bring the microphone to you.
Any questions?
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Throughout this presentation, you've talked a lot about UPS and the servant leadership that all the leaders in the company practice to help make it such a great place. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get to hear a little bit about you and your motivations. And so given that you're now in this role, for how many years has it been?
I've been with UPS for 30.
Oh, in this role?
In this role for 4.
For 4 years. Mm-hmm. What's your next step? Everyone has personal motivations, and I'm not sure where those are going to lead you to. Hopefully not FedEx, but just interested to...
That's an awesome question. You know, I get that question at UPS quite often. And the question that people normally ask me is, what are you going to do next, Juan? And then I say, well, above me, there's only one more job at UPS. And that's not for me. Here's what I have as a mission today, and I speak from the heart when I tell you this. When you get to this level, and you're in a position to really influence so many different lives, you got to remember, when I show up at UPS, I carry on me the lives of 480,000 employees. If we have an information security problem, if the UPS data is compromised, if the brand is compromised, I'm not impacting only my livelihood, I'm in essence impacting the livelihood of thousands and thousands of people, and their families as well, and our customers as well. So I take that really, really seriously. So for me, it's really making sure that, first of all, I do my job really, really well. And one thing I've learned after all these years with the company is that you never stop learning. You never stop developing your skills and your capabilities. And it doesn't matter how many years I have with the company, how many years I have in IT, how many years I have as an engineer. Our company is so large, so vast, I'm always learning something new. And every single one of the learnings makes me better in my job. So that's one. Second, I really have two objectives now. One is to keep making UPS better. That's definitely the case. And the next one is I really want to make sure that I create opportunities for people in the company to do all the things that I did within the organization. If at the end of the day, when I leave the company and I retire, I can say that I did those two things at the end, I'd be really, really happy. Great question. Thank you. You had a question back there. You can ask me.
Yeah, can you highlight maybe a little more detail around the decrease in transit time?
Oh, absolutely. Look, if you ship a package ground from New York to LA, right, that package needs to actually, UPS driver will pick it up. It will go to a sortation center. Then it will be put into a trailer. That trailer will be taken to a rail yard. Then it will travel on rail all the way up to most likely Chicago. There we will resort that package and then move it again all the way to LA. And that process will take roughly 4 days. Okay? Not a good deal anymore. Customers are looking for things to go faster. So in essence, what we're doing is in selected parts of the company, we are no longer using the rail. We are actually moving those packages on the ground with regular drivers moving at a much faster rate than what the train would do. And we believe that that's going to provide a lot of capabilities for our customers. Now, we're also expanding delivery onto Saturdays and Sundays, more than what we did on Saturdays. Now we're expanding the presence there. We're doing it also on Sundays. And we are working very actively in giving our customers even longer times in which they can give packages to UPS so that they can be delivered the next day using the ground system, not having to fly everything every single time. All right? Great question. Thank you. Yes?
Thank you again so much, sir, for sharing your time with us. Could you provide some context for the younger people in the audience? So you mentioned before earlier in your presentation about IBM being like a really important company when you were starting out. As you can imagine, there are very different competitors now, and the speed of which engineering, just some of those things that you mentioned, like drones and even your 3D printing manufacturing, those are extremely hard topics. How do you ensure that perhaps something is fluff as opposed to...
Oh, my goodness. That's such a great question. In fact, it's one of the... By the way, I first should tell you this. My daughter graduated from Georgia Tech, and she decided to go down the path of consulting, so that's what she's doing today. And I talk to her about these things all the time because at some point in time, she's thinking about making a different decision, right, and finding a company that meets the 3 C's. Back to your question, when it comes to actually selection of the right projects and the right technologies, it's a difficult thing for CIOs to do. You can imagine the numbers of emails that I get from companies that are always selling me stuff. And to be able to distinguish reality versus just simply fiction, it's not an easy thing to do, but that's when you actually first establish really strong partnerships with multiple companies that have assessed and looked at these technologies before, and you actually communicate with them. The other thing that's worked really well for me, it doesn't really matter what level you are in the organization, what you do for the organization, it's always important to have a community of experts, friends, colleagues that can provide you with guidance and direction, because most times you'll find that the problem that you're facing within UPS, somebody else has also faced. And having that community of experts, community of professionals that are connected with you is of extreme value to me. In my case, I participate in a number of CIO type of forums and communities. And I know that if I have a question about a specific product, a specific idea, I can pick up the phone and I can ask some of them what their experiences have been. And of course, that continues to help me learn more and more about how to make those types of decisions. One last thing I'll tell you. At the end of the day, all those things, they all have to align with the company's strategy. And I feel really strongly about these. Technology, just for the sake of technology, means absolutely nothing to UPS. I really make it a point to not have my team spend a lot of time on things that are really cool and fun to work with, but at the end of the day, will provide zero value to the company. It's important that you really focus, your investments and your time and effort on these kinds of things, on the things that will ultimately provide the most value to UPS. Sounds easy. It's not always easy, but it's definitely something that we need to practice constantly. Excellent question. Thank you. Any others? Yes?
Yeah, so I'm working on a senior design project right now. We're working on improving the delivery trucks for the future.
Oh, yeah.
And we're modeling UPS as our customer.
Uh-huh.
So we want to know, since you shown on there, we have autonomous driving vehicles in the future. We want to know, what's the prospect for when that's going to be potentially implemented for a semi-autonomous driving. And we also have several concept sketches.
I'd love to see them. We'll definitely find time, and I'm really glad you're working on that. It's an interesting problem. When you look at the cost of last mile or the cost of delivery, that cost of last mile delivery is the most expensive one of all. And it's because you have a driver, you have a vehicle, you have to drive to the locations where you make deliveries, those kinds of things. We are engaged in autonomous vehicle research. Right now, I don't see anything popping up in the next 2 to 3 years that is going to solve the UPS problem. In fact, even passenger vehicles, you see how slowly that is moving for multiple reasons. Technology, although technology continues to advance and there are less barriers there, there's still certain barriers that stop you from doing everything you need to have those types of vehicles. But we're into that. In fact, we have worked with a couple of companies that have these small robotic units that can drive autonomously, taking package to their final destination. We think that there are certain communities where that type of technology will provide value to UPS. So that's one. The other one is, look, I really would like to find a solution to the problem of getting drivers the package that they got to deliver next faster. Okay? Got to remember what happens here when you're making a delivery. When you make it to a stop, the driver has to park the vehicle, stop it, secure it, take the seatbelt off, then turn around, open a door, and then go into that cargo area to look for the package. Now, we do really well in determining where those packages are inside the vehicle, but getting to the right package, retrieving that package, and taking it out to that final delivery takes time, and it's expensive. And it's human nature. Drivers go into those vehicles, and although the package is right in front of them, they feel compelled to touch another 10. It never fails, right? That takes time. It costs money. UPS drivers are really expensive assets to the organization. So if we could get to a point in which there was a mechanism inside the vehicle that basically tenders the driver the next package to be delivered, that would save the organization almost $500 million. Now you know the problem we're trying to solve. And I think that there will be those solutions in the future. So look into that. Looking for that one. Okay?
Unfortunately, we are out of time for
Not
questions.
a problem.
Thank you so much for coming.
My
Can we please give
pleasure.
our speaker
Good luck, everybody.